Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. You just gotta love to see it. You know, we live in a different world. What I'm about to show you guys today, the clip that we're gonna cover, this whole situation happening would have been almost unimaginable 8 years ago back in 2016. You know, back then Democrats had such incredible power, and if you were the target of that power, well, you pretty much didn't stand a chance and you had to assume the fetal position, but now things seem a little bit different. It feels almost as if the world is healing, and no longer do the intimidation tactics of the left work. All this noise around this Tony Hinchcliffe joke that was supposedly going to lose Donald Trump the election, I mean single-handedly, Tony Hinchcliffe ran Trump's campaign into the ground, that's what they said. Well, that certainly didn't happen, and now Tony Hinchcliffe has finally decided to address the scandal, the controversy, and he's not backing down, not even a bit. This would have never happened in the past, but I guess it's a totally different landscape these days, and honestly, I'm just here for it. Let me show you guys exactly what happened. Let's take a look at the response, and let's really get into the details here. Let's explain the proper context of the Tony Hinchcliffe joke that was supposedly so offensive. In other words, let's highlight the dishonest media tactics that we've been exposing for years. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so Tony Hinchcliffe finally addressed what happened during his Kill Tony show just the other night. Take a look.
Last night, guys, hold on a second. Hold on a second. Ladies and gentlemen, last night I gave a speech. I don't know if you've heard about this. It was a speech about free speech, believe it or not. And I'm currently under attack. I'm the news. I don't know if you guys know this, but on my speech on free speech, I referenced Puerto Rico, which currently has a landfill problem in which all of their landfills are filled to the brim. I guess I'm the only person that knew about this, unfortunately. And with that said, I just want to say that I love Puerto Ricans. They're very smart people. They're smart, they're street smart, and they're smart enough to know when they're being used as political fodder. And right now, that is happening. And I apologize to absolutely nobody. Not to the Puerto Ricans, not to the whites, not to the blacks, not to the Palestinians, not to the Jews, and not to my own mother, who I made fun of during the set. Nobody clipped that. No headlines about me making fun of my own mother. Perhaps that venue at that time wasn't the best place to do this set at. But in any matter, to the mainstream media and to everybody trying to slander me online, that's what I do. I go hard, and that's never going to change.
I love the quote. I apologize to absolutely nobody. I love it. This is the only acceptable response, because the simple fact is here that Tony Hinchcliffe did nothing wrong. The only people who I see are at fault here are those who lied and misrepresented the context. We all heard the joke. Tony Hinchcliffe called the island of Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage, and the left ran with that, claiming Donald Trump and Tony Hinchcliffe think Puerto Rican people are garbage. But that was a lie. Context matters. As we know, comedy often pushes boundaries to highlight uncomfortable truths. And so on the surface, the joke may seem offensive, but when you understand the context, it's more of a dig at the Puerto Rican government, a satirical critique of systemic mismanagement that has plagued the island of Puerto Rico, than anything else. He wasn't talking about regular Puerto Rican people in an overt attempt to dehumanize them. The intent behind the joke wasn't to belittle Puerto Ricans, but to draw attention to the government's negligence in solving tangible issues affecting the people. You have to understand the context behind the joke. Puerto Rico has long struggled with waste management issues. For years, the island has been plagued by landfill overflows, poor waste disposal practices, and inadequate infrastructure to handle its growing trash problem. I mean, even the mainstream media has covered this issue ad nauseum.
Romana Castro sleeps with her 2 children on donated mattresses in this small bunk bed. She lost most of her furniture and belongings last month. when several feet of raw sewage and trash flooded her cement block home in Puerto Rico's capital, San Juan. Castro is one of 27,000 people who live in a ring of impoverished communities along the Caño de Martín Peña, or the Martin Peña Channel, a heavily polluted waterway connecting the San Juan Bay and a series of lagoons. The water is so polluted because the area has never had adequate sewer systems dating back 80 years ago, when housing for industrial workers was built here. More than 3,000 homes and buildings still discharge raw sewage directly into the Martin Peña Channel. Just as damaging, people inside and outside the communities use the channel as a garbage dump. Clinic board member Carmen Vélez Vega is a professor at the University of Puerto Rico School of Public Health and says that part of the problem is that the amount of trash here undermines their efforts.
But of course, the left never wanted to acknowledge that. And this is where selective outrage comes into play. They just want to focus on the surface level of his words rather than considering the deeper critique embedded within the actual joke itself. It's easy to dismiss his words as offensive or insensitive, but that completely misses the point. The outrage over the joke is a distraction from the real issue, Puerto Rico's severe waste management problems, which of course are seldom addressed by those in power. And this is what Democrats do. They have a pattern of misconstrued narratives, which leads us to the broader pattern that we often see with the Democrat Party and their political allies. Instead of addressing substantive issues that would actually improve people's lives, like waste management in Puerto Rico, or the rising crime rates in major cities, or crumbling infrastructure in certain states, many Democrats focus on identity politics, cultural grievances, and symbolic issues to rally their base. By framing Tony Hinchcliffe's joke as an attack on Puerto Ricans rather than a critique of government mismanagement, they can easily deflect from larger issues at play that in many cases they're actually involved in. They can deflect from the important issues and rather just focus on keeping the hysteria going as they weaponize this selective outrage tactic to turn a comedian's joke into a broader narrative of cultural insensitivity or bigotry. It's insane, but this is what they do, and they do it with so many different issues. Let's talk about crime rates in major cities. When people on the right highlight the rising crime rates in Democrat-led cities, the left often frames it as racist or a fear-mongering tactic targeting people of color. It's absurd. We could talk about the same thing with education and parental rights in education. During the debates over critical race theory, CRT, and general curriculum transparency, conservative parents and politicians expressed their concerns over what children were being taught in schools. But of course, instead of addressing these concerns, Democrats just label their critics as racists and bigots and misogynists, focusing the conversation on identity and further driving a divisive wedge into the body politic, rather than focusing on the quality of education or parental rights within the education system. And here's another great example, the immigration issue. When Republicans highlight the border crisis and its implications on crime, drugs, community resources, the economic issues, lost children, human smuggling, the abuse of women and children caught in the cartel's border crossing pipeline, instead of having that conversation, the left just shifts the conversation to accusations of xenophobia and racism. When Donald Trump says he wants to make America great again, the conversation's about bringing back a roaring American economy. But what do they say? He wants to bring it back to times of Jim Crow. It's absurd. It's a pattern of deflection, and that pattern is clear. When faced with substantive issues, certain factions within the Democrat Party prefer to focus on narratives that distract from their inability or unwillingness to solve those exact issues. And so they use accusations of racism, bigotry, or cultural insensitivity to manufacture outrage, to rally their base, and deflect from the real criticisms of their own policy failures. And that's exactly what happened here, and I think a lot of people are realizing that frankly the Democrats are full of it, totally full of it. And so it seems we've reached a point where people just don't care anymore. They're not playing this game with Democrats, and they're no longer apologizing. They're no longer scattering in fear at the thought of having to face the leftist pitchfork and torches mob. And that, my friends, tells me one thing and one thing alone. It feels as though the world is finally healing. Anyways, that's pretty much it. Good on Tony Hinchcliffe for not backing down and standing up for what's right. It's obvious the Democrats are playing an emotional game and they purposely misconstrue the narrative in an effort to hold on to power. Thankfully, it didn't work, but rather it backfired, and that pretty much tells you everything you need to know about the American voter. They're privy, they know what's going on, and they're simply done with the BS. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.